Communism, a governing type known for its clash with democracy and vast expansion across the world. As of today, it's on a downward trend, but at its height, communism was strong in Eastern Europe and across the world. Following World War II, Czechoslovakia was a bustling communist state that was stably under Soviet control. With the coming of a new generation and new ideas, desires to soften the communist restrictions emerged, and with this came consequences that would affect the world for years to come. A stormy summer, the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. Alexander Dubček, the first Secretary of Czechoslovakia and the man responsible for the event known as Prague Spring, coming into power in January of 1968, he quickly pushed for social, economic, and political changes. With this power, he formed the Action Program, a program meant to bridge the gap between communism and democracy, a program offering democratic rights but with some communist restrictions, and a program that he deemed socialism with a human face. But socialism is not what the Soviet Union saw in this. They viewed Prague Spring as a threat of Czechoslovakia leaving its communist path.
They wanted to keep something
wanted to keep communism
from that society which we
but
built.
they didn't want to have the suffering.
Yeah.
Like if you think differently, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It means that you want some change, which is positive.
The leader of the Soviet Union at the time, Leonid Brezhnev, forced the signing of the Bratislava Declaration, which demanded that Czechoslovakia and the Soviet Union keep a cohesive alliance. However, this so-called alliance was later broken. On the night of August 20th, 1968, the Soviet Union swiftly launched an invasion, and by the following morning, 500,000 troops had secured the nation after facing little resistance. First Secretary Alexander Dubček and Prime Minister Cernak were forced to submit to the Soviet Union's demand after being captured and taken to Moscow. In the coming weeks, fear was in the air. Everyone worried about what would happen next, and nobody knew what the Soviets were planning or what they wanted. 6 weeks after the invasion, Dubček and Cernak returned. Dubček gave a tear-filled speech in which he discredited and destroyed all the work he had done. The faint glimmer of hope that people from young to old all across Czechoslovakia had felt was quickly crushed in less than 1 week, and the harsh regime that was in place before was back. This is Gustav Husák. He was the leader of the new government and led the citizens into one of the darkest times in Czechoslovakian history. Yet the citizens never lost hope. They removed street signs to confuse the troops, withheld water and food from invaders, posted anti-invasion signs, and distributed newspapers supporting their cause across the country. Many even tried to convince soldiers to turn back. Through this, millions were left terrified of what would happen to them and their families. Many were arrested for things like not joining the Soviet Union's army or even killed during their peaceful protests. The Soviet Union's justification for the invasion was the Brezhnev Doctrine, signed by Leonid Brezhnev. This document stated that socialist regimes had the ability to intervene in countries that had a socialist government which was perceived to be in danger. Yet, the document was signed after the Soviets' invasion of Czechoslovakia and only used one time after, in 1979. The Soviet Union invaded the newly communist nation Afghanistan, joining in on the power struggle that took place before and well after Soviet intervention. The USSR aided the pro-communist party that were vying for power in this war-torn country. In Czechoslovakia during this time, the population took a massive hit, losing over 120,000 people to places around the world such as Canada, America, and Australia. Those who remained in Czechoslovakia continued to apply pressure on their government to change and adapt through consistent use of protests. In the late 1980s, the newly elected Soviet leader Gorbachev responded. He relinquished some communist restrictions, which, unbeknownst to him, created a butterfly effect which led to the Soviet Union's eventual downfall. In Czechoslovakia, Husák was trapped by his own regime. During his years in power, he kept peace by removing the Czechoslovakian protesters, but his regime was unable to adjust and slowly began its decline. On November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall collapsed, reuniting Germany as a country and lessening the reach of the Soviet Union. This inspired the people of Czechoslovakia to rise up against their harsh rule. On November 19th of the same year, over 500,000 Czechs and Slovaks filled the streets of Prague and forced the communist government out of their country after being occupied for 44 years. This revolution spread similar thoughts of rebellion to other countries under the oppression of communism, and in the summer of 1990, most of these nations have given power to anti-communist leaders. This decline in communist allies led to the fall of the Soviet Union itself. With fewer trade partners in its communist alliance and the refusal of reform from its leaders, the Soviet Union slowly lost its global power and eventually collapsed. The downfall of this superpower uprooted the economy of the world. With the lack of Soviet oil, many turned to the Middle East to get these resources, which majorly boosted their wealth. By the mid-1990s, President George Bush signed trade agreements with Russian leaders, allowing them to re-enter the global market. However, this time of financial drought left them weakened. The world at the time saw the effects of the Soviet invasion in more ways than it seems. When immigrants flooded out of Czechoslovakia, other countries had to receive them. One example is Canada.
So it was nice that they took me into the society. But yeah, it was challenging, but hey, I think we probably do it again.
Canada received thousands of immigrants from Czechoslovakia and graciously accepted them. They gave out money to help immigrants adjust and assisted them in finding jobs. But not all was good. Many immigrants experienced hate or discrimination against things such as their accents.
I was one of the nice part was that there was lots of English people working at that time with the company, and they said, if you wouldn't have that accent, you'll be one of us.
Some immigrants were able to be quickly integrated into the working life of a different nation, but language barriers and schooling issues left some stranded. Through hard work, many immigrants from Czechoslovakia were able to achieve their dreams and succeed in their new lives when in a different country.
Because I didn't finish university, I was 1 year short, 1 year short to be a teacher. And for me, I suffered because of that, because all my life I wanted to be a teacher. And so for me, the future was really iffy for me because language is very important. With hard work, I used to take courses, I volunteer a lot, and I had lots of support in people. So I would say yes, it was good for me because I became to be a teacher. I was very lucky that I had people around me who gave me good ideas, and they gave me good suggestions what to do and what not to do. And that every day when I went to work, I used to just make sure that it's me, I achieved something that I always wanted. And especially in different language, the people were very good to me, my co-workers. So yes, it was difficult. They have lots of challenges. We went through a lot, but it was worth it. For me, it was worth it. And now when I'm retired, I am very fortunate that I can afford to go to places, I can travel to, and I can go back to my country.
From acceptance to ripples across the world, Prague Spring and the following invasion were turning points in history that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union and disrupted the global economy. Throughout history, the world has seen the rise and fall of dynasties, empires, rulers, and kingdoms. There have been countless turning points that have shaped groups of people and the way they interact on a global scale. The one constant of the human condition is change. Change creates evolution, and from change stems revolution, the birth of new ideas, and the demonstration of how turning points can bring out the true impact humans can make.